voy a hacer la presentación en castellano, pero el seminario después se desarrollará en inglés. I will introduce Belachew in Spanish, but then the presentation will be delivered in English. Bueno, Belachew es, como decía, catedrático de Relaciones Internacionales y director del Departamento de Trabajo Social y Política Social en una institución muy prestigiosa en Austria, en el MCI de Innsbruck. Ha trabajado fundamentalmente en temas vinculados con las relaciones internacionales y en concreto con las relaciones entre Europa y África. Es un experto en la política y los conflictos africanos y particularmente en las cuestiones relativas a las migraciones y a las migraciones entre y desde África. Cuenta con numerosas publicaciones de impacto y algunas muy conocidas monografías publicadas en las mejores editoriales. Por poner algunos ejemplos, de 2008, publicada en Ashgate, African Fortress Europe, también en Ashgate en 2009, Anatomy of Violence, en Routledge en 2013, Global Security Triangle, en 2018, Understanding Migrant Decisions, en 2019, Human Trafficking and Exploitation en Routledge también, y el último de sus trabajos, que lo ha publicado en Macmillan, Postcolonial African Migration to the West. Bueno, por ser breve, porque lo que nos interesa es escucharle a él, destacar que ha sido miembro del Comité Directivo para la preparación del proceso preparatorio del Pacto Mundial de Naciones Unidas para una migración regular, segura y ordenada, esto en 2017, y es miembro del Grupo Asesor sobre Migración de la Comisión Económica ha sido miembro de este Grupo Asesor Informal sobre Migración de la Comisión Económica de las Naciones Unidas para África, también en 2017. Y también ha sido miembro del Consejo de Migración del Ministerio del Interior en Austria, también vinculado con cuestiones de migraciones. Tuvimos la oportunidad de conocernos ya hace años, cuando celebramos aquí en Madrid el Congreso Europeo de Trabajo Social. Bueno, y desde entonces hemos mantenido contacto, y hoy es un orgullo y un placer que nos haya podido visitar y aceptar nuestra invitación para impartir esta conferencia, ¿no? Hemos cambiado la temática para que por la tarde, en otras actividades que tenemos previstas, pues sean temas diferentes, y en función también de lo que hemos estado hablando en los últimos días y de algunos acontecimientos que están ocurriendo en el mundo en este momento. Hoy de lo que nos va a hablar es sobre África en la encrucijada de la geopolítica, un tema interesantísimo sin duda. Bueno, yo me callo, me voy a mover para que pueda ocupar Belachew toda la pantalla, y como se suele decir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, colleagues. I would have loved to speak in Spanish. Unfortunately, I am not able. Therefore, I like to present my my ideas in English. So, if there are questions, if there is opportunity for questions, and there is time, and we can address together. So I am going to give you some ideas about this geopolitical situation and how it is impacting politics in Africa, and especially its relevance also for social work. And thank you so much. Yeah, and these conflicts, competitions among global powers from Europe and beyond, they have not only positive impacts but also negative impacts. And let me just highlight some of those things. Maybe we can also discuss some of the issues afterwards. Yeah. And so let me start with some positive trends. When we talk about situation in Africa, it is difficult to ignore colonial time. And so many African countries started to become decolonized late 1950s, early 1960s. And when we start with early 1960s, what kind of progress has been achieved since then? For example, if you take life expectancy in 1960, where many countries started to become independent, Africans have lived just 41 years. And if you take last year, 2024, now it is already 64 Africans as average life expectancy, 64, which is a huge progress. And also another area of progress is the child death rate before reaching 5 years, and has also decreased substantially and has fallen by 3/4. Early 1960s or around that time, many children have been dying before reaching their fifth birthday. And people attending universities has also, the number has increased substantially, ninefold since 1970s. In 1960, 15% of Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, have lived in the cities, in urban areas, just 15%. And last year, according to UN data, already 43%. So usually in sociology or in economics, when there is increasing urbanization, it is a sign of improving life situation, at least in general. But is it that also the case in the African context? And what we see here is, it is to some extent yes, but to some extent not. It is because in African context, some people, or many people actually, are leaving countryside and going to the cities because agricultural life is not that attractive. They are not producing enough to lead a good life. So in the European context, urbanization was a sign of improving economic situation, because agriculture did not need so many people to work on agriculture, therefore industrialization, and people were saying, okay, so many people are not needed to work. And in African case, it is not because it is not needed to that they work in agriculture. Instead, agriculture is not that viable. People cannot sustain themselves from agricultural products. So the context is a bit different, and therefore we cannot say that because of increasing urbanization, the life has been also improving. We cannot say in many African contexts. And now I'm already with the negative and the challenging situations in sub-Saharan Africa. SSA means in this case sub-Saharan Africa, because the North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa are kind of different cases. That's why I focus rather on the sub-Saharan African case. If we see people living in extreme poverty, which is according to the World Bank, if you have only, for example, 2.15 US dollar per day for everything. So not in Ethiopia, for example, instead in Spain. Imagine you have only 2.15 US dollar for everything, for food, for studies, for housing, for everything, which is extremely low. That is what is called extreme poverty. And that is 462 million Africans living in such a situation out of 1.3 billion people. That means on current trends, Africans will make up over 80% of the world's poor by 2030. That is a huge number. That is, let us say, the worst number. And in the 1990s, if you take in the global context, Africans were only 14% in the poorest in the global comparison. So it is the number of Africans living in poverty is also going to increase, and climate change affecting many people, desertification, or when it rains a lot. When it does not rain, it the rain kind of stays away for a very long period of time, and for people who do not have any kind of irrigation, it is a very difficult situation. So many people do not. In Africa, for example, you have maybe 5% of agriculture has irrigation, only 5%. So if you compare with the Spanish agriculture, which is a completely different situation, yeah. So pandemic has devastated many. The economy in many African countries, they lost their jobs. The firms were closed. Businesses were kind of closed and bankrupt. And also the war in the Ukraine, because many African countries import wheat from Ukraine and also fertilizers. So because of this war, wheat could not be imported, fertilizer could not be imported, or it is not adequately imported. Potentially, Africa could feed 9 billion people, more than the global population at the moment. Africa has the potential to feed so many people. But because of climate change, because of poverty, because of corruption, because of conflict, Africans are not able to feed their own people. And another problem is the inflation issue. There are countries, as you can see here, inflation more than 50% every year, and the income is not adjusted. And so your income is not adjusted according to inflation, which means that for many people it is very difficult to sustain themselves. And also one of the key problems, according to me, some people do not see it as a problem, is population growth. African population growth is, in my view, a big issue, a big problem. Even if economy grows, if population is grown in such a high speed, at the end, rather poverty is going to increase. Now, at the moment, we have 15% of the world population is Africa or Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, but 3% of global population, global production from the economic point of view, and from the global growth point of view, only 3%. So 50% global population, only 3% global production, only 5% global growth. So there is a huge disequilibrium here. Yeah. And also, as you can see here on the right side, until 2050, Africa is going to be 2.5 billion Africans are going to be. It is almost double of now, almost. And another thing, as I said before, the fertility rate. African population growth is very high, the highest in the global comparison. And if you take some countries, maybe you cannot read because it is too small. Somalia, Chad, Niger, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, all countries, more than 6 children per woman, per mother, which is, I mean, if you take Spain, if you take Greece, if you take Italy, these countries, 1 point something like that. And then you see these countries like Somalia, Chad, etc. So very slow and very low economic growth, very high birth rate, which is a huge challenge for African economy, and poverty is going to increase, conflicts are going to increase, and for social work, as I said before, there is a lot to do. I mean, I think social work can play a big role from the preventive point of view as well as from empowerment point of view. For me, one of the key areas in social work is women's right promotion. Do women really have right to decide to have a child or children or not? Or it is men who decide to have sexual intercourse, and then woman has to say yes, and at the end you have a very big family which is very poor. And if we compare different regions, Africa, East Asia, South Asia, and what we can see is extreme poverty decreasing in South Asia, be it India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, Nepal, or whatever, or of course East Asia. Anyway, it is poverty decreasing massively, substantially, except North Korea maybe. But in the case of Africa, this dark red region, between 2000 or starting with 2000 and continue 2024 last year, there is even extreme poverty increasing, the only region where extreme poverty increasing. So this is again one area where we, for social work, which is going to be a challenge. Who is going to be poor? What kind of social benefits are there? Many African countries do not have social insurance. There are no social benefits when you lose a job. There is no support. Many people are working in informal sector. That means there is no official employment, which is about 70-80% of sub-Saharan Africans are informally employed. That means they are not employed or registered. They do not pay for insurance, and they will not get this insurance at the end. So these are challenges African countries facing. Now, another point which is important in my bio is the issue of democracy. So global powers are there. Poverty is there. What are global powers doing? And they are democratic global powers coming to Africa. They are non-democratic global powers coming to Africa. So how is the situation, and how do the people see democracy, Africans themselves? Interestingly, it is probably the only region in the world which has the highest support for democracy. And it is a paradoxical situation. And if you see here, this is the data from Afrobarometer from last year, support for democracy and rejection of authoritarian rule. Here, 80% reject one-man rule, 78 reject one-party rule, 65 reject military rule, 66 prefer democracy to any other form of government. So in African countries. So when many people, my colleagues from Africa especially, and some liberal thinking European colleagues say, oh, democracy is a Western concept, it does not fit into African context, I say, please, this is an offense to Africans who are hundreds of thousands sitting in prison because they are fighting for democracy, fighting for human rights, criticizing government. They want to participate. And if you say democracy does not work in Africa, you are just offending these Africans who are fighting for their rights. And I studied also peace and conflict studies, and we were together from Spain, from Germany, from Austria, from Norway, from United States, from Canada. And especially Europeans were saying we should not impose our values on Africans. And I have been arguing, you cannot impose it because it is not your value. It is a human value. It is not a European value. And because they are saying it because they have a kind of bad feeling because of colonial time. Oh, Europe has colonized Africa, therefore we have to be cautious. That is different thing. But you cannot Europeanize human value. You are just monopolizing human value and saying it is our value. It is not your value. Of course, Europe was able to institutionalize it. Europe was able to implement it. Europe was able to organize it according to this principle. But Europe did not invent, because you cannot invent democracy. You cannot invent human rights. You can enable it. You can give a chance for democracy to develop itself, but you cannot invent. A different concept. And when I see this data, I feel kind of confirmed in my rejection of my African as well as well-meaning European colleagues out of bad feeling because of the colonial time, just kind of support a very dangerous idea. To say democracy is a European idea or European value is, in my view, a very dangerous idea, because you are kind of despising or kind of rejecting these demands of Africans, ordinary Africans. So if we see again 2011, 2021, there are different kinds of surveys taking place. 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015. In all these surveys, almost every year, these surveys from Afrobarometer, what we can see is rejection of authoritarianism and support for democracy has not decreased. Instead, always continuously remained the same. Support for democracy is not just last year, or it is not just 10 years, but it is continuously the same. And I think we have, because we talked also before, preventive social work, that to enable participation, women's rights, democratic participation as one of the goals of social work practice. And in Europe, what we see is many people are running to the right side, not right in the good sense, but to the right wing. But many Africans are striving for this. And I think for social work, it is a big task to support democracy. And it is the most important value which we have to cherish. Yeah? And also, if we see two things here, because China is playing, we are going to see soon, China has been playing a big role in Africa. But still, what many Africans prefer is, in general, in total, the free democratic Western economic model, not only politically, but also economically. If you take United States, because how they pose the question in the survey is kind of tricky, because they said former colonial power, which has a negative connotation. But if you would say, if you take Spain or France or Germany or UK, you would have gotten a different answer than if you say the former colonial power, because it is a very negative term. Therefore, you get a negative answer. So for me, a problematic approach in the survey itself. But in general, what we see is that the Western development model of democratic and free economics is the preferred one, in spite of this, Chinese 23%. Now, on the right side, again, you see on the country level, how many people support democracy. In Ethiopia, 90%. In Senegal, 88%. In Sierra Leone, 85%, etc. On average, 68% supporting democracy. So here, I think we have a big chance to enable this freedom of people, and also from social work perspective, to carry on this desire, the wish of the people that they would like to live in a free country, not in an authoritarian system. Yeah, and if we see democracy around the world, or preference for democracy around the world, as I said before, and let us compare Africa with 66%, the highest region in the world, which prefers democracy to other forms of government. The second one is Asia with 55%, Middle East and North Africa 54%, Latin America 52%. So here you can see Africa, the region with the highest number of preference for democracy, besides, for example, Europe or the Western countries. Yeah. So this is telling already a lot. And the current situation, the current Russian presence in Africa has a negative impact on Africa. And on the one hand, Africans, during the Cold War and also during the colonial time, many Africans were allied with USSR because of Western colonization, because of apartheid, because of CIA's influence in many parts of Africa. And if you see here, these both maps show whether to end the war or to sanction Russia, and Russia should stop the war and condemn Russia. And many Africans kind of abstained from voting. Two countries even supported Russia openly, which is Eritrea and Mali. Many abstained many were also these green ones, especially supported Ukraine, and that means Russia should stop its aggression and invasion. And it is surprising that so many people abstained or they did not condemn Russia because they were grateful for the period Russia was supporting Africans during the colonial time or during the Cold War time. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons, and nowadays why many African countries just keep quiet. Not necessarily because they are in favor of invasion, instead because they don't want to be ungrateful towards Russia. And Russia is also very important, strongly present in African countries, in mining sector, arms exportation, and also investing in nuclear power. For especially in case of Egypt, it has already built a nuclear plant, and there are many other countries trying to do the same thing. I mean, it is absurd actually. It is better in Africa to build solar energies and some other renewable energies than to build nuclear plants. Yeah. And then other area is the Wagner Group, which is this mercenary active in different countries, in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Sudan, and etc. So Russia is present, not necessarily to stabilize, but destabilize, and not necessarily for Africa, but instead against the West. So Russia's presence in African countries is in order to destabilize Europe, and there is a huge task. And also through its disinformation campaign, it is to defame democracy, and to win hearts and minds away from Europe, to gain to its side, and to emphasize always this colonial time, how bad Europe was as a colonizer, and which is true in itself. But this kind of as a ritual to repeat all those things, so that Africans stop or cut their relationships with Europe. And Russia is to a great extent successful in this. And also on the cultural level, with Ethiopia, especially because of the Orthodox Church, it has been establishing its relationship. Ethiopia is an Orthodox, half Orthodox, half Christians, as well as Muslims, Catholics. I mean, Catholics, Muslim, Protestant, one half, and the Orthodox the other half. So it has been trying to influence Ethiopia, and also from the religious point of view. And other countries are playing a role, Gulf countries in Africa, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and also Turkey and Iran. And because of poverty, many countries are dependent on development aid, dependent on NGOs. Now Islamic countries are coming with their NGOs to solve kind of social problems, to alleviate poverty, but also to propagate Islam. And these Islamic activities are also increasing. There is land grabbing, so-called land grabbing, investing in land, but not to produce food for the local people, instead to export it from Emirates, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from China, and also from the European countries. There is so-called land grabbing, investment in agriculture for export, where people are suffering from hunger. And the Red Sea area is an insecure area in the Horn of Africa, is an insecure region, and the Arab countries are trying to influence, to expand their influence in this region. So especially United Arab Emirates is good in investing in oil, in gas, in gold, in diamonds, in renewable energy, in ports. Ports are being also built by the Arab Emirates. And also on the diplomatic level, the not only United Arab Emirates, but also Saudi Arabia and Qatar are expanding their embassies. The number of their embassies are also expanding. So democracy does not play a role for them. European cooperation with Africa since independence was saying, we cooperate, we can make we can invest, we can make trade deals. provided that you respect human rights and democracy. And that is what is these conditions in the case of Europe. But these countries, there's a democracy is your own business. Human rights are your internal businesses, and we don't care about this. So there is a different approach for Europeans, for the West, or at least for other presidents, not for Trump. Democracy was important in cooperation, also for economic cooperation, and for Europe anyway. And for these countries, democratization does not play any role. Yeah. And, oh, sorry, this is genau. And China, China's influence, this is one of my favorite pictures. It is in Lagos, in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, China has been investing a lot. And here, this is an investor or project leader, and he is making a call, and his left hand is almost in his pocket, and this Nigerian is holding for him an umbrella, and holding a Kalashnikov to protect him against evil people. It is an interesting picture. At least he could hold the umbrella by himself instead of this Nigerian is holding umbrella for him. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, this is already shown these power relations. Who has the power here? The power is the Chinese, who has the Chinese investor. And also interesting to see, if you see 2010 and 2011, how China's power expanded in a very rapid way. And that is about trade volume, trade rank in Africa, Chinese. In 2000, the total value of trade in goods, the Chinese trade value in goods was 7.3 billion. In 2010, it was already 93 billion. 2015, already 136 billion. So in a short period of time, the Chinese trade influence expanded in a rapid way. And from the proportionality point of view, how much was the Chinese share in 2000? It was only 3. 2010, it was already more than 11. And in 2015, already 16%, the Chinese share of Africa's global trade. And from rank 8 in 2000, and it came to rank 2 in 2011 and rank 1 in 2015, China. So here this shows that China's power has increased substantially and extremely rapidly. And if you compare this with the Europeans, in 1990, share of European and American companies in Africa were 85%, and the Chinese, you could not even mention it because it's almost non-existent. 2013 already, 12% of all infrastructure projects in Africa from China, and the European or the Western decreased from 85 to 37. So from 1990 to 2013. In 2020, the Chinese increased to 31% and the Western to 12%. So here you can see how the Chinese influence has been increasing, especially since they said democracy and human rights, whatever happens in your country, it is not our business. And yeah, as you can see there, the trade in 2022 was already 282 billion. And also on the cultural level, the cultural institutes in China have increased substantially. If you see here, which countries have highest cultural institutes, it is France, it is USA, it is China. It is actually before USA here, because it is only the Confucius institutes are taken. If you put the Confucius institutes as other institutes plus Confucius together, China is number 2 after France. So with the biggest number of culture institutes in Africa, so in a short period of time. Also from income point of view, since there are many Chinese companies in Africa, there are many schools where Chinese is being taught. And because, for example, if you take Nigeria, if you speak Chinese, you are going to earn 7 to 9 times the normal income of the Nigerians, because they are going to pay much higher than the average income in Nigeria. So it makes sense for the Nigerians to learn Chinese, because they would earn much more money than other people. So even also from students, from a scholarship point of view, in 2003, 1,790 African students enrolled in Chinese universities. In 2018, 15 years later, what you have is 81,000. Instead of 1,700, you have 81,500 students, which is an annual growth of 303%. So it is also, there is this significant increase in a short period of time. So, I mean, it is not negative by itself. What I'm saying is here, what are the impacts of such non-democratic authoritarian systems on social situation? Of course, on the one hand, investment is there, people are being employed, but what about other social aspects, participation, democracy, human rights, even racism? Many times there are many reports shown that Chinese are very racist in Africa, and Africans living in China are exposed to racism. And this is again more a psychological aspect, in the sense that those people who are oppressed themselves are the ones who oppress the others even more. You know, Chinese feel some kind of racism in relation to the West, but they have to give this racism towards Africans, because they become even more racist than white Europeans towards Africa. No problem. And this is an interesting psychological phenomenon. And those people who suffer oppression become the highest oppressors. I mean, in African context, for example, I ask myself, how is it possible that Africans who always say Europeans exploited Africa and they colonized them, they oppressed them, but these people who are in power, the presidents, prime ministers, are doing at least as worse as the colonizers in oppressing their own people. And just you transfer this operation to those people who are below you. And that is, for me, a psychological phenomenon. I mean, you cannot revenge against the Europeans, but you have to pass the violence towards who cannot defend themselves. And this is, for example, many Europeans who were, especially from United Kingdom during the colonial time, the criminals from UK who were sent to their colonies, or from Spain as well to Latin America, to different, because they were criminals in Spain. They were oppressing the local people in Latin America more than the Europeans. Because they say, oh, now I have someone below me whom I can oppress. It was once Albert Camus, French writer, once, who said in one of his books, everyone has a wife, a servant, or a dog. If he does not have a wife, he has a servant. If he does not have a servant, he has a dog. And at least to this dog, he has the last word to say. That means even, for example, in Latin America, the mulattoes, who were these mixed people, and they were feeling themselves better than black people, and they were oppressing these black people, even sometimes more than the white people were oppressing the black people, because they kind of passing the aggression to those who are lower in the ladder. Now, why I just to sum up here, why I brought this issue in the discussion is there are global powers in Africa, and the social problems, the economic problems that are emerging in spite of many progresses which we have been seeing, it is not necessarily because of the global powers, instead because Africans themselves, we Africans themselves, are enabling the oppression of the people. oppression of the people, because if China comes and exploits the resources, China is not coming as a colonizer. During the colonial time, Africans did not have a free choice. They had to just give up, and they were subjugated. But now, and there is where I differ from my colleagues, many colleagues of mine, who said that there is neocolonialism. I said there is no neocolonialism. There is a free enabling by Africans themselves. We Africans are enabling Chinese or Europeans or whoever who make business with us in bad conditions for Africa. If you see that China is exploited, look for another partner. If China is exploiting you, or Russia is exploiting you, look for another partner, because you have a choice now. You did not have a choice during the colonial time. And this is one of the weaknesses, academically as well as from the political level, you kind of transfer your responsibility always to someone else, instead of taking responsibility for your own bad policies, and you scapegoat someone else, and you feel always a kind of victim. And we have economists, world-class economists nowadays. We have lawyers, world-class lawyers. We have engineers who understand what technologies, what economics is. And we did not have them during the colonial time. We did not have freedom. We did not have educated people, but now we have freedom and educated people. And also from social work point of view, what I would say is to educate social work students, be it in Africa, be it in Europe, not to perpetuate the victim mentality. Of course, colonization was a barbarous time. Nobody denies that. Nobody plays down this. But own responsibility, that is one of my issues, which I'm also going to speak this evening. Own responsibility is important, and social workers very often, unfortunately, tend to be on the side of the victim, but forget the responsibility of the victims as well. And we cannot have the same argument which we had 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Today, the arguments are different. And I think we have to, even if it is a kind of uncomfortable truth, own responsibility plus historical responsibility. Historical responsibility is colonization, historical responsibility is exploitation. But there is also own responsibility. Are we doing enough? What about corruption? What about exploitation? What about capital flight from Africa to Western banks, to Switzerland, to other countries? It is not I also even defend Switzerland is not responsible to develop Africa. It is not its task. If someone brings money and puts in a Swiss bank, it is the right. I mean, from the legal point of view, not from ethical, maybe from ethical point of view, a different thing. But from the legal point of view, Switzerland is not doing anything wrong, because you are, as a free actor, you are coming, bringing your money, putting in my bank. Therefore, it is a free choice, a free agreement. So from the legal point of view, it's perfectly okay. Of course, from ethical point of view, you see, we can discuss differently. And that is where I think we have to educate also social work students, not blindly defend the beneficiaries, and instead to confront them with the fact. The fact is, you are an adult. And many times, many Europeans, especially liberal thinking Europeans, treat Africans in a very nice way. And my request is, please don't treat Africans in a nice way, but in a fair way, in a just way, in an adult way, because otherwise you are this is more or less continuation of colonialism. If you treat people just nicely, because you are not telling the truth, because of bad conscience, because of bad feeling, because of colonization, etc. And we have to overcome this. And I think I stop here. I don't know. Maybe I talked already too long. I promised not to speak longer than 45 minutes. I think it's more than enough. Yeah. Thank you. I think I don't know whether there is someone online. Thanks for your attention. If you have some time, we can discuss now.
maybe we can do some questions or buy some questions. I have many of them. The first thing I want to do is to thank you for this very, very clear presentations and presentation. And I think it is a presentation that departs, starts from the data in order to say things and to say important things. And of course, these are very complex dynamics that involve many levels, variables, agents. So to try to say this is the correct way for the future is maybe we can look for different tracks in order to look for the future. But I'm sure you have given us some clues from the all this empiric evidence. Some data that the support of the democracy from the African people is amazing. I was looking while you were talking. I was looking for data from Spain, and we have a recent study, national study from the FIS. The FIS is the Spanish body of research, sociological research. And I read some data. People between the age of 75 and 34 support democracy only the 68%.
Interesting.
And those from 18 to 24 is 72%. So our support of democracy is lower than the people from
the African countries.
So I think that's a very important starting point. That Africans believe in democracy, still believe in democracy, while in United States and Europe, the data
Very bad.
we are going back in a very bad way. Yeah.
Can you send me this? Because I'm trying to look for Europe because it is an interesting comparison. Yeah, thank you.
And also this idea that Europeans treat Africans like children.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a simplification of what you used to say, but maybe it has also to do with the guilt Europeans feel about their colonial.
That is true.
And that prevents them of having
an honest discussion.
And a trade relation with that,
exactly,
without conditions. Because maybe we feel or we think in ourselves as moral. We believe we are superiors. We are better in moral words, and that's not true.
Yeah.
And I like it very much to your idea that democracy is not a European concept, and some values are not European values. These human being values.
Exactly.
That's a very good starting point for other discussions.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Because you see, one of the epistemological problems I would say is that a universal value will be first Europeanized and monopolized by Europe, and then presented to the world as a European value. And the reaction, the very first reaction from the other part of the world, we don't have anything to do with this because it is a European. The process was first the idea of, many people say, oh, you see, in 1215 there was in the United Kingdom the Magna Carta, and it was developed there, and you see Europe is the birthplace of democracy. I said, no, it is not the birthplace, but it is institutionalized, it's implemented. And for me, interesting thing is even to see from historical religious point of view. In the first book of the Bible, I'm not quoting the Bible for its sake, but there is something interesting from psychological and mythological point of view. Adam and Eve, they decided to leave the paradise. It was their choice. Why? Because they wanted to live in freedom. paradise was the symbol of you get everything what you need. You have enough food to eat. You don't do anything, but you don't have freedom because God is providing everything. And they decided, no, we work hard, but we would like to live in freedom. So live in paradise, I don't know whether you know the author Eric Fromm, which is American psychologist, German American or Jewish American, where he writes about the fear of freedom.
Yeah.
And where he also analyzed this issue, the living of paradise as the first sign of looking for freedom. Because we don't want to be provided by God always for everything instead. And that's why I say this freedom is a choice of every human being. Every human being. It doesn't matter whether European or African. But interestingly, Europeans monopolized it. And once Europeans monopolized it, Africans allergically react and say, this is something European. And it is the process which makes it European. It is not the thing itself which is European.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, during the apartheid regime, Africans were saying, black South Africans and Africans were saying, if you Europeans are for human rights, why don't you allow us freedom in South Africa? When Portugal did not want Angola and Mozambique to become independent, because other countries became independent until 1975, these two countries were still under Portuguese colony. And Africans were saying, how is it possible that Portugal and the Europeans, they say they are for freedom and human rights, but Angola and Mozambique are still colonies? And then in 1981, there was the African Charter of Human Rights, which is completely African. It was not imposed by Europeans. It was not imposed by United Nations. It is exactly like the European Charter of Human Rights. So they write freely, they sign freely, they ratify freely, and they say, oh, human rights are Europeans. But it is completely contradictory. So that is why I say, it has nothing to do with Europe. It is our choice that we fight for democracy and human rights.
He has a very, very strong idea. And sometimes we don't realize that that's the thing. The human values are human. Not you said. Yeah. Democracy is not American. There are some films. The films they try to show us that there's a good democracy is American democracy. Yeah, that's it. And another thing, and it will be my last question or comment, in relation to the church.
Yeah.
The role of the Orthodox Church, you present some audiences. Also the Muslim church. Of course, in a time the Catholic and the Christian churches in Africa. What about the African churches, the African
traditional religions? African traditional religions are still there, but they are losing in influence because of especially these Protestant evangelicals, which are become very charismatic. In the face of poverty, and many people do not have perspectives, and these religions come and promise them life after death. So it is the will of God that we're suffering, and at least we will be rewarded afterwards. And people have become a kind of fatalistic, and they are, they come together, they sing together, they dance together. At least it gives some comfort. At least on Sundays, you forget about those things. Yeah, and it is also becoming a sign of modernity, and traditional religions, they are still there, but they are losing in significance.
But churches are a way to some countries to go into Africa.
Yeah.
The Orthodox from Russia, the Muslim from the the Arabic countries, so on.
Yeah, they are coming from also from the United States, especially evangelicals. They are coming, Russians. Orthodox Church was traditionally is not a very missionary church. But now the Russians, because, for example, the church in Alexandria in Egypt, after the invasion of Ukraine, it was on the side of Ukraine. And the Russians were not very happy about that. But for example, they started a hand to the Russian church in Central African Republic. Started to expand their influence, but they do not have this history of missionary activity like Catholic Church or like the Protestants. It does not play that much role.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, for your interest.